Next, let's discuss your data storage and then your options for extracting, transforming, and loading your data into Google Cloud Platform. Your options on GCP for building a data lake are the storage solutions that you saw earlier. You've got Cloud Storage as a great catch-all, Cloud SQL and Cloud Spanner for relational data, and Cloud Firestore and Cloud Bigtable for NoSQL data. Choosing which option or options to use depends heavily on your use case and ultimately what you're trying to build. In this chapter, we'll focus on Cloud Storage and Cloud SQL, but you'll see the NoSQL options like Cloud Bigtable later on in the course when we talk again about high throughput streaming. So how do you decide on which path to take for your lake? The final destination for where your data lands on the cloud and the paths that you take to get your data to the cloud depends on where your data is now, how big your data is, this is the volume component of the 3 V's of big data, and ultimately, where does it have to go? In architecture diagrams, that ending point for the data, as we mentioned earlier, that's your data sink. A common data sink after a data lake, that's your data warehouse. Don't forget a critical thing to consider is how much processing and transformation your data needs before it's ultimately useful for your business. Now, you may ask, do I have to do the processing before I load it into my data lake or afterwards before it gets shipped off somewhere else? Let's talk about these different patterns because there's multiple right answers. The method that you use to load the data into the cloud depends on how much transformation is needed from that raw data that you have into a final format that you want. In this chapter, we'll look at some of the considerations for the final format that you could want your data in. The simplest case might be that you have data in a format that's readily ingested by the cloud product that you want to store it in. Let's say, for example, that you have data in an Avro format and you want to store the data in BigQuery because your use case fits what BigQuery is good at. Then we could simply just do EL, extract, and load. BigQuery will directly load Avro files. EL is extract and load, and this is when the data can be imported as is into a system. Examples include importing data from a database, where the source and the target already have the same schema. One of the features that makes BigQuery unique is that, as you saw before with the federated query example, you may end up not even having to load that data into BigQuery to still query off of it. Avro, Orc, Parquet, CSV files are now all supported for federated querying as is directly connecting to a Cloud SQL database and running a query across databases through an external data connection. So what's an ELT, or extract, load, and transform the data? That's when the data is loaded into a cloud product is not in the final form that you want it in. You may want to clean it up. Or you may want to transform the data in some way, such as perhaps you want to correct it. In other words, you would extract it from your on-premise system, load it into the cloud product, and then do the transformation. That's an extract, load, and transform, or ELT. You tend to do this when the amount of the transformation that's needed is not very high, and the transformation will not greatly reduce the amount of data that you have. ELT allows raw data to be loaded directly into the target and then transformed there. For example, a very common example, inside of BigQuery, you could use SQL to transform that raw data that's loaded into BigQuery and just simply write it to a new table. Now the third option is extract, then transform, and then load, or ETL. This is the case where you want to extract the data, apply a bunch of processing to it, and then finally load it into the cloud product or solution of choice. That's usually what you pick when this transformation is essential, or if the transformation greatly reduces the data size. So by transforming the data before loading it into the cloud, you might be able to greatly reduce the network bandwidth that you need. If you have data in some binary proprietary format and you need to convert it before loading, then you'll need ETL as well. To summarize, extract, transform, load, or that ETL, it's your data integration process in which the transformation takes place in an intermediate service before it's loaded into the target. As an example, the data might be transformed in a data pipeline, like by using Cloud Data Flow, you're going to see later, before ultimately being loaded into BigQuery.